Where do I even start with this? So I just got done watching Spider-Man Lotus, the now infamous fan film directed by Gavin Cunnop and starring Warden Wayne as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So it's infamous because the main director, Gavin, and the main lead, Warden, were exposed for having some very derogatory comments towards African Americans, and I'm not surprised. Like, his name is Gavin. He looks like a fucking young version of Colonel Sanders. Like, this isn't a shock to me. I'm gonna focus on all that nonsense later on in the video so I can spend time to mainly just talk about the movie and how I felt about it. But trust me, I will begin my jokes off. I mean, I kind of have to. So, Spider-Man Lotus. I have a lot to say.
Holy shit! It's Spider-Man!
Spider-Man Lotus is the long-awaited 2023 fan film directed by Gavin Cunnop and starring Warden Wayne as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. You've heard of Peter B. Parker? Well, meet Peter B. Prejudice. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll stop. So the film takes place immediately after the death of Gwen Stacy as Peter struggles to come to terms with it. It's pretty clear that the story takes heavy inspiration from Spider-Man Blue and The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man, as these are more grounded stories that are clearly more character-focused and driven. And I think adapting these to a fan film is actually really smart considering that it can compensate for the budget. Although Spider-Man Lotus did have a budget of $100,000, which is a lot of money for a fan film, for a Spider-Man project, this is basically pennies. Like, you aren't going to be expecting a lot of action sequences or VFX fidelity here. And if you came in here expecting that, then, well, you're going to be disappointed. Majority of the focus here is spent on character drama, and oh boy, you will feel that runtime after a while. I guess now I can segue over to my pros and cons with the movie, with the first pro being the soundtrack. The soundtrack for Spider-Man Lotus is honestly really stellar. I got a lot of Danny Elfman vibes from the orchestration with just how both heroic and emotional it got, and it definitely did a great job setting the tone for a lot of the scenes. It was composed by two people, Caleb Liu and Gladius, and what they were able to accomplish here really just elevates the production of Lotus that much more in my opinion. Another pro I have is for the Spider-Man costume itself, and it looks really good on screen for what they were aiming for. It's pretty much a direct translation of the John Romita Sr. Spider-Man comic book costume with changes here and there to make it more of their own and make it more unique, and for that I applaud them. Let's see, next pro, yeah, that's all I got. Now let's get to the fun part.
I wish Spider-Man would deliver my pizzas every day.
I'm gonna fucking shove a pizza up your fucking ass.
Okay, so going forward, a lot of my criticisms about this will be kind of harsh, even though it is a fan project, mainly because a lot of people crowdfunded and put money into this, and Gavin seemed confident enough to hold a red carpet event, so I'm gonna hold it to a certain standard, which it just unfortunately does not meet. For instance, there are a lot of scenes in the film that make me feel like I developed glaucoma. It's hard to make out what's happening on screen sometimes, especially during darker scenes and action sequences. Like, for whatever reason, they have this obsession with close-ups and extreme close-ups during fights, and for a lot of the time, it's hard for me to keep track of what's going on during the fight because a lot of the visual information is just missing in the frame. You can maybe make the argument that that's the style they're going for and that it's intentional, but to me, it just seems like it's covering up for the lack of choreography. And hey, camera operator, here's a cool little trick you can do with the camera. You can either just, move this ring like that way you can see more of the frame, or you can move this entire thing back like 3 feet so you can get some full shots instead of just mediums and close-ups. A lot of the acting was pretty hit or miss. I think Peter, Harry, and maybe Gwen did a pretty okay job. I think Peter was probably the highlight of the group, which makes sense since he's the lead. But Mary Jane was just awful. Like, a lot of her dialogue just didn't really come across as believable half the time.
I'm asking you why you're here. What do you want? Worried about you, Peter.
So the runtime for the film is a point of contention for me because it clocks out at exactly 2 hours, and I think that's kind of absurd for your first feature. I think a good 30 minutes to an hour could have been shaved off to kind of help improve the pacing, because once you get towards the middle point of the movie, it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. It's dragging really bad, and it doesn't really pick up until the end pretty much. And shit, sorry, this shit's giving me fucking laryngitis. You know, this entire thing is such a waste. You had literally everything going for you. You had John Watts co-signing your film, even though you've gone on record to shit-talk him publicly, and you had Andrew Garfield acknowledging your movie, out of all people. Like, that's insane. On top of that, you had the entire Spider-Man community on Twitter backing you, pretty much. You had people donate to your fucking crowdfund for the movie, to the point where you got over $100,000 for the budget. That's insane, you know, and like, that's something that not a lot of filmmakers can do or achieve. Yet, no matter how good your film was going to be, no matter what you did on it, forever it's tarnished. Spider-Man Lotus is tarnished, your reputation is tarnished. Like, everything about this just feels really, really wrong now. And I know people can say separate the art from the artist, but it's kind of hard to when the art is kind of intertwined with the artist. Because how can you adapt a character like Spider-Man who represents ideals that you clearly do not care about? It's hypocrisy in a way. So I guess in the end, there are two main morals that you can learn from this. The energy that you put out there will eventually find its way back to you, so just try and make it be something positive. And for the most important one, just don't be fucking racist. Like, come on.